What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast, this Sunday edition. We are about 4 months exactly away from the next NFL regular season weekend, which still seems insanely far away, and certainly seems like, for Green Bay's sake, there's just a couple things that need to get resolved before that point. Of course, Aaron Rodgers' watch was on full effect on Saturday. Rumors were spreading that Aaron Rodgers was in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers was not, in fact, in Green Bay, so no news. I don't know if no news is good news or bad news. Probably not great news at this point, but who knows? As I mentioned, this thing will continue to get weirder. There will be Aaron Rodgers sightings, as there was on Saturday, and just everything that's going to get strange about this, I'm sure, can and will continue to get strange and awkward and everything else. So buckle in. It's probably going to be a very long summer, but what else do we have to talk about anyway? So let's jump in. We're not going to talk about Aaron Rodgers today. I do want to continue. I'm not going to spend too much more time. Yesterday I went over, what I thought were the best draft classes from this past weekend's draft. Probably just going to, finalize my draft thoughts on today's episode. And what I always really like looking at are the best team and scheme fits for individual players. And I'm just going to go through the first 3 rounds and give you about a dozen names that jumped off the page to me, including a couple Packers that I think are not only, good football players, but they really went to the right situation, right scenario, right team, things like that. So again, I'm going to go about, 12 guys deep into this through the first 3 rounds only. I wasn't going to get too far past that top 100 in this exercise, but wanted to go over these and what I'm always looking at here. And yesterday I went over, the fact of, which of these franchises did best in the draft. And somebody asked me very wisely on YouTube and in the comment section, why is it that, all of these teams that end up with the best players usually don't do very well? Well, a lot of it is franchise based, right? So some of these franchises are just bad franchises and, not anymore, but we saw Cleveland as such a great example of this for 20 years. It almost didn't matter, who went to that franchise. They were just bound to fail. And every once in a while you got a Joe Thomas or somebody like that, but more often than not, the players that went to Cleveland, just the infrastructure there, the coaching, the management, it was just bad. And sometimes it's really tough for players to overcome that. Sometimes you have bad scheme fits, and a lot of times that can be a disconnect between a general manager and a coach. General manager likes a player, they pick him, the coach gets him, and he's like, I don't really have a use for this player. And those are usually dysfunctional franchises as well, but unfortunately you see that far too often. Sometimes teams just have bad leadership and bad coaches, and they're not getting the most out of their player, or they're putting them in a position to try to win now rather than developing their skills. Like, there's a million different reasons why a player's career can get off track, and it's so important that you get them to a place where they fit in, where their talents meet the scheme, that they can go in and coach the player up. I think the ultimate one that I always looked at here, and once the draft is done, I love going through this and seeing, all right, which players just make so much sense. The one that always screamed off the page so obviously was DK Metcalf for the Seahawks a few years ago. When you have a guy that is literally, he's built to be a deep ball threat, and with his just size and strength, and everyone's like, well, his route running and his intermediate stuff, who the hell cares? Let him do what he's best at. Let him be a deep ball threat, and you give him to the best deep ball thrower in the entire NFL in Russell Wilson. They're just one of those perfect matches that are made in heaven. Meanwhile, you've got a guy on the other side in Tyler Lockett that can do all that intermediate and short stuff. Like, they complement each other so incredibly well. So that's what I'm looking for here is those players that scream off the page that, hey, they went to a good spot, a good system, a good team. And you're not going to see a lot of first round picks on this. And a lot of that's because I thought a lot of the first round picks were, scheme versatile. Like, some of the really good players, like, it almost doesn't matter like where they go in some capacity, right? Like, you get, some of these top players like a Jamar Chase or whatever, like, you can put them almost anywhere and they're going to succeed. So I didn't spend a ton of time in the first round, but nonetheless, these were the 12 players that jumped off the page as really great scheme and just team fits. And one's contradicting what I just said just a second ago, but Trevor Lawrence, still one of those. I think, again, he probably would have had the ability to be successful just about anywhere, but I really do kind of like this mashup with Urban Meyer. Now, I did not like the Urban Meyer hire at all. I didn't like a lot of the things that the Jaguars necessarily did this offseason, but I do think Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer is a really good mashup. You look at what Urban Meyer liked to do with his quarterbacks at Ohio State. I think Trevor Lawrence has the ability to do all of those things, fits in with the scheme, and then they go out and get Darrell Bevell, who was really instrumental in making sure that Russell Wilson was successful as a rookie quarterback, and they really wanted to have somebody like Bevell in that room, in that office, that could really help develop whatever quarterback they ended up drafting. Trevor was obviously the guy for obvious reasons, and I just really think that he and Urban Meyer, believe it or not, as much as I'm kind of shocking myself saying this, I do think that is a really good matchup. And I think as they're kind of really trying to reboot this franchise with Urban Meyer and with a bunch of new players and all those sort of things, I think Trevor Lawrence just makes such a logical choice to be the guy that finally is that quarterback in Jacksonville. Obviously, they had a great run with Mark Brunell, but they've never really had like just that alpha guy at quarterback that has the ability to raise the level of play to everyone around him. And Trevor Lawrence, I think everyone's expecting him to be that type of guy. The next player that jumps off the page to me, and maybe more than anyone, Kyle Pitts. Now, this is, again, a player that you put on 32 offenses and he's going to be successful, but matching him up with Arthur Smith in Atlanta, he gets the tag team in that 2 tight end set with Hayden Hurst. I love that duo and that pairing. And if in fact they still have Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones on the outside, that is such a fun offense with Arthur Smith. And I think Matt Ryan still has the ability to be a situational quarterback that with good coaching and talent around him, he can do a lot of really good things. And I think Arthur Smith is the perfect coordinator for that. But Kyle Pitts comes in. He has the ability to be a massive weapon. And again, doesn't necessarily have to even be the guy at tight end right away because they still have Hayden Hurst there. He can do what he does best, and that's just being a true alpha weapon in any offense that he is in. Be a red zone threat, run after the catch guy. It doesn't matter. And I think Arthur Smith will be able to unlock his potential with Arthur Smith's creativity. I just think that that is a massively good fit for that franchise, for that player, and a really sound pick there. Now, should they have selected a quarterback could be another conversation for another day, but no question to me is that a perfect fit. Next up is maybe my favorite fit of anyone in this draft, and that's Jamin Davis, the linebacker out of Kentucky, playing for the Washington football team. And I hinted and alluded at this in yesterday's video. With that Washington front, right, they've got Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen at defensive tackle. They've also got good rotational players in Matt Ioannidis and Tim Settle. And then you've got Chase Young and Montez Sweat on the outside. Opposing offensive lines have to literally spend every ounce of their time, effort, and energy just blocking up the front four. They don't have a ton of time to also spend on a young, up-and-coming, super fast, super athletic inside linebacker in Jamin Davis. Now you have somebody who can get from point A to point B as quick as any linebacker in football, has some ability to take on blocks, but he may not even have to with the talent that they have up front and the ability for them to eat blocks up front along that defensive line. I don't think there's a better fit. I mean, Jamin Davis had to be jumping out of his shoes with the players that he's going to be playing behind, and that just fits his skill set so incredibly well. When you have those fast, athletic linebackers, you just want them to be able to play as clean and carefree as possible. There's no team in football that has the ability to protect him better than what the Washington football team does. And again, you just have rare athleticism, sideline to sideline speed. I think he has the ability to be a real menace on the second level. Somebody I would have loved for Green Bay. But again, if you're Jamin Davis, I don't think you can be upset in any way, shape, or form that you ended up in Washington. Now, maybe they're not going to be the best team, but as an individual player, I think that defensive front's going to keep him really clean and allow him to be a very special player in Washington. Jumping to the second round, Asante Samuel Jr. with Brandon Staley's defense in LA. I just think, again, you look at what Brandon Staley's able to do with his corners. I'm not saying like this is all of a sudden a replacement of what he had of like Jalen Ramsey and some of those corners in LA, but I think if there's any defense that's really going to be able to use Asante Samuel Jr. to his full extent, I think it's Brandon Staley. This is somebody that, you look at what Kyle Fuller was able to do in Vic Fangio's offense in Chicago, and now what they're hoping he's going to be able to do in Denver. I think Asante Samuel is going to be able to do a lot of those same things. And again, I love the versatility here for Samuel. I think he can play outside. I think he can play inside. And I think he's a starter from day one. So huge pick there. And I think a really good mashup of, again, just scheme and what they needed on defense and what Asante Samuel is able to bring to the table. Next up is Aaron Banks, the guard for the 49ers. And this is one that actually threw a lot of people because, again, you think of that 49ers Kyle Shanahan offense, you're thinking of fast, athletic players that can get out and in space, and you're looking at smaller, quicker players, right? Well, Aaron Banks is one of the real unicorns in this draft, in my opinion. Not only does he have the size and the strength, but he is really nimble footed for that size and strength as well. There are a few guards, in my opinion, or few offensive linemen, period, in this draft that have the ability to not only be a plus player in that Kyle Shanahan, zone scheme and post everything like that, but also being able to, run with power and be a power blocker as well. And think of that Kyle Shanahan scheme and how versatile that scheme is and how many different run concepts that they throw at different teams. To me, there's nobody better in this draft than Aaron Banks, that if you want versatility in your run game, run some power, run some inside zone, run some outside zone, do a little bit of everything, run some traps. Like, I literally believe that there may not be a better player in this draft than Aaron Banks to be able to run all of that stuff, especially as an interior offensive lineman. So I think Kyle Shanahan very much knew what he was doing with that pick. Next up is Rondale Moore, the Cardinals wide receiver. Again, you're talking about an air raid offense. You're not looking for, with Rondale Moore, a receiver that's going to go line up wide on the outside and be able to run a bunch of, this is just somebody that they're going to be able to work in space and let him do his work as a small, compact, insanely fast wide receiver, maybe even getting some time in the backfield. If anyone has the ability to open up his game, I think it's Cliff Kingsbury. And again, just another perfect fit there. Next up is Dwayne Eskridge, and I'm not even necessarily talking scheme fit here as much as I love the fit next to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I think DK, again, is your elf on the outside who's going to be able to be your deep ball threat, do so many different things. Tyler Lockett is such an advanced route runner, and now I think you get just kind of a guy with afterburners who can be a straight line fast, player, but also has some nuance in his route running. I think this has somebody that you can play in the slot from day one. I also think if you want to play Lockett in the slot, Eskridge has the ability to play outside, and you just get a little bit more juice on that offense. And again, somebody that has the speed to get deep as well with Russell Wilson at quarterback. So another really strong pick for the Seattle Seahawks there. Next up on my list, your Green Bay Packers and Josh Myers. And again, we can talk about the Creed Humphrey stuff, Josh Myers, and I'm actually not going to talk too much about Myers here because my video tomorrow is going to be my really, really deep dive into Josh Myers if everything goes according to plan. But I really think that this is a smart scheme fit. You're talking about somebody that has the ability to get to the second level, who has the ability to steal those blocks in the zone run game. He did a lot more inside zone than outside zone at Ohio State, but if you're looking what Matt LaFleur wants to accomplish, not only as a run blocker, but as a pass protector, more of a seal block type of guy than more of a maybe aggressive mauling type offensive lineman, I still think you have to love what he has the ability to bring to the table, and again, I think is a perfect scheme fit for Matt LaFleur. Next up is Creed Humphrey, picked later to the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, this is an offense that uses a ton of screens, a ton of misdirection. You have to have some mobility as an offensive lineman. Not only does Creed Humphrey have that in spades, but he's a stout player at the point of attack as well. I think he fits perfectly within that Kansas City offense. And for a team that was desperately in need of more high-end talent across the offensive line, I think they found a really good player in Creed Humphrey. Next up, sticking with your Green Bay Packers, is Amari Rodgers, and he just hits everything that Green Bay wants. The versatility to play not only in the slot, but on the outside. I think he can be a gadget-type player. You're giving those jet sweeps and motions. I think he can line up in the backfield, kick returner, punt returner, just everything that Green Bay was missing, from a specialty sort of standpoint, run after the catch standpoint, just pure slot receiver. Tyler Ervin was nice to use in that situation, but Tyler Ervin was never going to be able to guy that could line up in the slot and actually win with route running. Amari Rodgers is that player, and I think he really has the potential to unlock this Packers offense even more. Next up, two left. Second to last one is Trey Sermon, running back for the 49ers. Again, you look at what Ohio State did and you look at what the San Francisco 49ers like to do. A lot of zone concepts, has the ability to kind of hit that home run. And I just think you look at some of the Tevin Colemans and the Matt Breidas and stuff like that. I think that Trey Sermon has the ability to be right up there in regards to talent and what he's going to be able to accomplish. Again, just a perfect scheme fit. And again, San Francisco does such a great job of fitting what players fit so well within their roles within that Kyle Shanahan offense. And then last but not least, one of my favorite players in this draft, Ben Cleveland. You talk about a player that's just jacked up, big, strong, physical. Where more would you want him than in a power running, physical attacking Baltimore Ravens offense? I just thought that, again, was a perfect fit for the player and the scheme and what they're trying to accomplish. I think he can get in that, in the game for them sooner rather than later and be an impact blocker. I think he can play left guard, right guard, but has some agility as well. I just think if you look at what the Baltimore Ravens try to accomplish in the running game, Ben Cleveland is a perfect fit for that. And again, just another player that is a perfect scheme fit for where he ended up. So just to kind of wrap it up, Trevor Lawrence, Kyle Pitts, Jamin Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., Aaron Banks, Rondale Moore, Dwayne Eskridge, Josh Myers, Creed Humphrey, Amari Rodgers, Trey Sermon, and Ben Cleveland. Those were the 12 that through the first 3 rounds just kind of screamed off the page that I loved the player going to those specific team fits. That's going to do it for me. As I mentioned, I'll be right back here tomorrow with a really big Josh Myers breakdown. I watched, I think it was 10 games, every snap from 2020, a couple, I think 3 games actually from 2019 as well. Captured a ton of notes, and it's definitely one that you're going to want to check out for sure. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Check out tomorrow's episode. Check out today's version of the Pack a Day podcast on the audio, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.